Hello, everybody. Thank you all first for coming. I know how important this is for the members of the Greenways Coalition. Thank you so much for coming out and showing your support. Thank you, Hunter, Brian, John, Laura, anyone else I may be forgetting from the steering committee, Mundo, for all the work you guys have done to put this together, because it's been a great event. So thank you. My name is Daniel Abram. I'm the Director of Policy and Programs at New Yorkers for Parks. New Yorkers for Parks, we're members of the Greenways Coalition because greenways are parks, and they are safe connections to parks. Greenways continue to connect communities that are a place for recreation and reprieve. As we've said earlier today, they're not just for cyclists. They're for people who are walking, people who are pushing a stroller. They are for everyone. And just like parks, every community deserves greenways for recreation and an opportunity to find that reprieve from the persistent hum of the city. New Yorkers for Parks, we've been around for about 100 years advocating for parks and open space, equitable access to parks and open space, equitable maintenance for parks and open space, and we can't do that work without the help of the Parks Department. Sue Donoghue has been and is a strong supporter of our organization and our mission, and we've been grateful to have a Parks Commissioner at the helm that is willing to fight for parks needs. Please, everyone, give a warm welcome to Sue Donoghue, the New York City Parks Commissioner.
Thank you, Daniel, for that introduction. And I also just have to give a huge shout out to New Yorkers for Parks. They've been just tremendous advocates and allies in the Play Fair Coalition that I'm sure many of you here are part of. Really helps to raise awareness of the importance of our parks and open spaces and provides a voice and a coalescing organization around the importance, highlighting the importance of our parks and open spaces. So I am deeply indebted to your work and so grateful for it, so thank you. I am so pleased to be here. As Daniel said, Sue Donoghue, New York City Parks Commissioner. I am thrilled to be here and that have the opportunity to talk on this really important topic. I want to thank Hunter and the Brooklyn Greenway Coalition for bringing us together and for giving parks an opportunity to highlight all of the incredible work that is going on. I think it was 2 years ago that we were here, and it's just been, an incredible, incredible series of advancements. And it takes this kind of coalescing and this kind of organizing and advocacy. That's where the progress and how the progress happens. So thank you all in this room for your advocacy and support. It's really important. And I don't need to tell any of you because you're here and you know it, but our greenways are critical green infrastructure in our city. They're destinations, places to enjoy our waterfronts, relax in nature, spend time with friends and family. They're also, importantly, routes for transportation. Greenways are one of the city's safest and most connected travel networks for a diverse range of transportation modes to access neighborhoods. As I know Andrew Kimball mentioned earlier, jobs, schools across all 5 boroughs. And they allow for personal transport in a low-cost way with the lowest environmental impacts, which is extremely important to us in our work at Parks. As I know you also heard earlier, we couldn't do our work at Parks without other agencies, and we work together to ensure our greenways travel seamlessly between streets and parks. I know, incredibly biased, but we know that those through our parks are really special because of all that they offer. They're destinations to visit, while being scenic and safe for the many ways New Yorkers use our facilities in particular year-round. So that's why we are proud to host so many different types of beautiful greenways in our park system. They span the city's great shorelines. They provide views of the water. Whether you're on your way to work or spending an evening watching the sunset, these greenways include the busiest bike routes in the nation and connect countless New Yorkers to incredible amenities. Our greenways are varied in use. They don't just support cycling, as we know, but are recreational opportunities, spaces to enjoy and share joyful moments with one another through many different modes of travel and recreation. Parks greenways are also safe spaces, as you can see from these photos, protected from cars, that can be enjoyed by families and be a much-needed respite from what we know are the busy streets of New York City. Our newest New York City Parks greenways are at the forefront of urban design, creating beautiful routes with impressive infrastructure that connect New York City despite challenging alignments or site conditions. I see Chauncey taking a picture. He was there with us when we opened this one, the beautiful Bronx River Greenway. I hope some of you have seen this, the Starlight Park section, which we're so pleased about, and it's just such an important connector. And then also the East Midtown Greenway, which we just opened last December, and is such an example of what can be done with will and funding and working together. East Midtown with EDC, just an incredible collaboration to bring a greenway out over the water. Incredibly successful and an exciting one for us. But to get a little bit more specific for all of you here, this map shows Parks Greenway Network. At Parks, we maintain over 240 miles of greenways. This is a big task and one that we are increasing our focus on, and we see the continued growth in cycling across the city and increasing popularity of our parks since the pandemic. So we know that's why we are hard at work rebuilding and expanding our greenway network. The city is investing over $1 billion right now to meet the demand that we see out there in our parks and across the city and ensure a viable greenway network for today and also importantly for future generations. As I know you heard earlier today and we'll hear more about as this important summit continues, we're partnering closely with DOT and with EDC on 6 additional greenway planning processes to develop capital projects that will continue our current streak of significant greenway investment. We have beautiful pictures. I heard that Andrew Kimmel had a flyover, so you got to see how we're thinking about the city and about the important network connections that we can make. We also know, and I also know, that many of you in this room are already deeply engaged with our agencies on these planning efforts. And we are so thankful for the time, effort, and energy that you devote as Greenway users and advocates. We could not do our work without that input, without the push, without the advocacy. And we'll be continuing over the next few years to be looking for that input, and we know that you'll be committed to sharing your wisdom as we move forward. And I thank you in advance for that. It's going to be really important, that critical input. I also wanted to take the opportunity while I'm here today to share a great new resource that we developed at the Parks Department. Earlier this year, we launched a new initiative called Vital Parks for All, which highlights an initial investment of over $3 billion of projects to deliver improvements to our park system for all New Yorkers. And greenways, we know, are one element that contribute mightily to enhancing our vital park system. And over $1 billion of this investment, as I mentioned, includes greenway enhancement projects. Greenways are vital for a livable New York, and our increased investment helps us to achieve a goal of ensuring all New Yorkers have access to transit, and that access is resilient, green recreation and transportation options that promote our health and the health of our environment. We also, importantly, as part of our Vital Parks initiative, We also created a new web-based tool called the Vital Parks Explorer that lets you gather information on community access to various elements that make up a vital park system. This tool allows us to identify gaps, whether in greenway access or other elements of a vital park system, such as tree canopy cover, importantly, bathroom access. It can help us to plan for and target new investments where they're needed most, and also to bring these investments and amenities to underserved communities. But it also is a tool for New Yorkers. People can drill down in their neighborhoods at the street level, help us gather information. What are you missing? How can you help us advocate for what's needed? So importantly, it's not only for us to be able to help target our investments, but to gain feedback from New Yorkers on where we need to go next. What do we need to be doing? We also, let me see here, in addition to the Vital Parks Explorer, we also are working hard to adapt our facilities and policies to the 21st century, including by working with an interagency task force on promoting the safe use of electric micromobility in the city. Since 2020, during the pandemic, we saw a large expansion in the use of e-micromobility across New York City, with both the legalization of e-bikes and stand-up e-scooters in New York, combined with the COVID pandemic, where e-bikes met the unique needs of both delivery workers and everyday New Yorkers looking for ways to travel safely, to be able to travel outdoors. So the incredibly quick and expanded use of e-micromobility brought about a steep learning curve and safety challenges for the city and for our transportation network. Among pedestrians, that balance of pedestrians, traditional bicycles, and now e-bikes and scooters going at various speeds. So to respond to this increase in ridership, City Hall convened a group of interagency stakeholders in fall of 2022 through the Electric Micromobility Task Force. And in March 2023, we released a plan, Charge Safe, Ride Safe, New York City's Electric Micromobility Action Plan. Included in this plan was the park's e-pilot, which was a temporary rule change to allow e-micromobility on our greenways, and also to drive and test out methods of managing speed and traffic flow on our greenways and on our park drives. Understanding the experience of park visitors in relation to micromobility, and develop targeted education and enforcement details to ensure safety in our parks. We want people to be out and enjoying our parks. We want families to be out enjoying our parks. We want people to do it safely. So our plan, the e-micromobility action plan was about how could we assess what is happening in our parks, how can we improve safety. And we're working hard to figure out how to safely manage all these uses in our parks and open spaces, which includes public education about what vehicles are allowed and what are not allowed. You may have seen our PEP officers sharing these postcards with Greenway users at park entrances to educate users about the rules. Our e-pilot that we're engaged in is also helping us learn what does and doesn't work before we seek any permanent rule changes to adapt to the new micromobility reality that is happening in our city. It's not an easy job to adapt 19th and 20th century parks to the recreation and transportation needs of not only today, but also of tomorrow. So this summer, we made a decision to extend the e-pilot through May of 2025 in order to spend an additional year testing new methods for safety, managing these devices in our shared park spaces. We've been working closely with our colleagues at DOT, as well as leaders in Central Park and Prospect Park to study how the loop drives in those parks can be modified to meet the many needs of park users today. There are many in this room who know those drives well and know they provide an important pilot for us to understand how people are using our park drives, and that important intersection between pedestrians and e-bike users. You'll hear more about the updates to those facilities, the outcome of those studies, and we plan to take what is learned from those studies and apply those ideas to greenways across the city. We're also pleased to let you know today that we're launching a new input tool on the New York City Park website. This is what we're showing here, and it's allowing anyone across the city to provide us with location-specific input on our drives and our greenways to help us identify locations of concern along greenways, or hear your ideas. You're out there, you're using these spaces. You are such an important user group to tell us about physical changes to improve conditions. This information will help direct efforts to improve our greenway network for everyone, and this will be launching in the next few weeks. I'm also pleased to be able to be here today and share an update on for us at Parks is really two of our most exciting greenway projects that are underway right now. One, if you haven't heard, is the Tibbetts Brook Daylighting Project. This is a tremendously exciting project for us at Parks, and we're partnering on this project with DEP within Van Cortlandt Park, and to the south through Kingsbridge in the Bronx. This project will transform an abandoned railway corridor in New York City's largest green infrastructure project to date. It'll create approximately 4 acres of new parkland and extend the Putnam Greenway and the Empire State Trail by approximately 1 mile. It is. This is an important and exciting one and definitely deserves the applause. In addition to what it will do to expand the Greenway, it will also help prevent over 200 million gallons of wastewater from entering the Bronx River every year and create, yes, a shout out for that too, and create at the same time a beautiful new stream in the Western Bronx. So it will help to catalyze additional greenway routes to the south as part of the Bronx Harlem River Greenway implementation plan that is currently being led by DOT. And aside from the incredible benefits of this project, I think it's really important to also highlight both the creativity and, importantly, the interagency nature of this project. There have long been dreams, we know, of creating a greenway in this corridor and seeking ways at the same time to prevent wastewater from entering the Harlem River. But it wasn't until Parks and DEP joined forces in this way that these projects became a reality. We know that many advocates had championed this cause for decades, and we're so thrilled to be able to see it become a reality. As we continue to develop new greenway corridors in the city, we'll look to this Tibbetts Brook project as a reminder that we should always seek to create multiple benefits for the public with our major new infrastructure investments. DEP and Parks are currently hard at work finalizing the design of this project and expect to move into construction by late 2025 or early 2026. We couldn't be more excited about this, and we look forward to sharing this project and plans and process as we move forward. It's a really important one for our agency, for DEP, and also for the city. And then, moving to Central Queens, we have another project that demonstrates the city's commitment to creatively repurposing abandoned infrastructure. It also demonstrates so many things. The power of community advocacy, community voices coming together, and then what can happen when city government dollars meet that urgent community need. The Queensway Plan was a grassroots effort by community members and, importantly, by the Trust for Public Land to transform a forgotten railroad right-of-way into new park space and completely create a new Greenway corridor in the city. In 2022, Mayor Adams and the City Council provided funding to turn this community dream into a reality by beginning design on the first phase of this 3-mile corridor. Once the full Queensway plan is realized, it will create over 40 acres of new parkway in central Queens, better connecting many diverse neighborhoods. Commercial districts and schools. There's multiple schools along the way, along this corridor, connecting schools to each other and vastly improving Greenway connections across our largest borough. The Met Hub segment of the project is currently in design, but just this past spring, I'm sure I'm not telling many of you in this room who don't already know this, we received the incredible news that the city was awarded an additional $117 million capital grant from New York City, from US DOT, to design and construct the second phase of the corridor, the Forest Park Pass. Parks and our partners at EDC are hard at work refining the design of the Phase 1 project and executing a grant agreement for the second phase with the federal government. Like the new stream in the Tibbetts project, the Queensway will be a unique Greenway design, responding to its location in the hilly and forested areas of central Queens. It will transform areas that have been overlooked and marginalized, creating new public open spaces for community gatherings, spaces for children to play, and of course, importantly, a destination to ride or walk along a beautiful new Greenway. So that's what I said initially about this project. It is one example of where community advocacy, community input led to government investment and significant then federal investment. Couldn't have happened without that advocacy and that push from the community. And now we're well on our way to a really exciting new Greenway project for Queens. So just in finishing up, I'd just like to extend a sincere thank you to everyone in this room that is fighting to see our city's Greenway network continue to improve and expand. There is no way we would be here where we are today without the support and excellent advocacy from all of you and our partners at the Brooklyn Greenway Initiative. I share your enthusiasm for the importance of the network, both for rest and relaxation, and also as critical city infrastructure to help move the millions of New Yorkers who have, we know, places to go, things to do, places to be. My staff and I who are here look forward to continuing to partner with all of you to build out the best Greenway system in the world. I'd say from what we've heard today, we're well on our way to doing that. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Hunter, and the Brooklyn Greenway Initiative for having me, and I think we'll take some questions. Thank you all so much.
Questions are coming around. If you want to come grab a seat.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, thank you. All right, there's a handful of questions here. The first one I have is how well, it's not from me. It's from folks in the crowd.
Got it.
But how are you working with DOT to make street crossings within parks owned greenways safer?
Such a good question, and thank you for asking it. And it goes back to what I was talking about with the studies that we're doing both in Central Park and in Prospect Park. We know this is one of the biggest issues that we face in parks, is that intersection of pedestrians and cyclists, and real concern and public safety concern. And so we are looking closely at crosswalk redesign. Is there a way that we should be amending? You know, our parks and our parks drives were built when there were cars in parks. We all know that's no longer the case. There are our maintenance vehicles, importantly in parks, that are taking care of those parks, but we need to adapt, and that's what I talked about earlier. We know we need to adapt our parks and our parks drives to the 21st century. So we're looking at and working closely with DOT, a study that Sam Schwartz has convened, looked at Prospect Park, looking at Central Park, and looking at ways we can adapt those crosswalks. So it's an avid and ongoing conversation, and these park studies that we've been embarking on in collaboration with two of our bigger parks are going to help us to inform the changes that need to be made.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. What have you learned from the initial study findings around safety, specifically from the micromobility action plan? I'm trying to read this. Enforcing speeds and tracking accidents, etc.
So it's a very good question, and it's absolutely the reason why we engaged in a pilot to gain more information. What we learned is there's a lot of concern out there about as I said, when pedestrians and cyclists are in parks, and interest in how we can continue to enhance safety. That's why one of the many things we've done as part of the study is to actively have PEP officers coordinating with PD, handing out flyers, enforcing and educating people about what is and isn't allowed in parks. We have this e-micromobility pilot that's happening, and it's for e-bikes and e-scooters. It's not for mopeds. It's not for motorcycles. It's not for motorbikes. We don't want these different e-micromobility uses on park paths. And so it is, in part, it is about education, it's about enforcement, and it is about, for us in parks, always about that balance between wanting to allow people to commute and engage in our parks as they need to, but also thinking about the safety of New Yorkers.
Thank you so much. Neighborhood parks, especially large parks like Central Park, can be safe and accessible places for kids and families to bike to school. How can the Parks Department leverage existing green space to create safe routes to school without the need for expensive and lengthy capital projects?
That is an excellent question, and we think a lot about public safety and safety of kids and children and families. And when we think about safety, we think about all aspects of safety, whether that be lighting, whether that be programming. How do we make our park spaces as inviting and safe as possible? At parks, we believe that is by activating them, by programming them, by bringing people into our parks. We know that that enhances safety. Years ago, the reason why dogs were allowed off leash early in the morning and late at night was because of that need to bring more people into parks. It makes them safer. When we think about access to and from school, we're thinking about how do we make sure our paths are well lit? How do we make sure that our parks are well programmed? We are looking at, through these studies of Central Park and Prospect Park, how can we enhance, like what came up earlier, how can we enhance crosswalks so they're safer for families? So for us, it's always a multi-pronged approach, and it's always trying to balance those needs for safety, access, and mobility.
How can New York City parks prioritize both greenway access and on-water recreational programming in all waterfront communities throughout New York City, prioritizing environmental justice communities?
So I think one of the ways that we look to do that, and I talked about our Vital Parks tool, we are looking to direct our investments where they're needed most. And so we've done a whole lot of work around mapping and inventorying where our assets are today so that we can see very clearly what's missing, and we can identify and direct resources where they're needed most, whether that be tree canopy cover, bathrooms, greenways. We are always looking to target our investments to where they're needed most. So with the Vital Parks tool, it's been an enormous, enormous data analysis effort to help us identify and clearly map, and that's the Vital Parks Explorer tool too. Not only can we see it, we're making it available for communities to see it, to tell us, like, raise your hand, this is where we feel like we're missing amenities. And so it's about targeting the dollars we have, the investments we have to where they're needed most, and also relying on and hearing best that community input to help direct where we're making those investments. We think a lot about access to the waterfront. A lot of the work that we do in our planning division, we know how important it is, and I think we've done tremendous work in opening up access to the waterfront, and that is both through our greenways, but it's also to making that access as hospitable as possible. Trees and benches and places to stop along the way. It's not just, you know, a greenway to ride on. It's actually thinking about where people can stop and enjoy and have a seat and view, you know, what in many cases is brand new access to the waterfront. You look at what we did on the East Midtown Greenway, and we are so proud of it, and it's so beautiful, and it immediately became so popular because it's a greenway, but it's also those incredible stairs that you can just sit and just look at Roosevelt Island, and like we haven't had that kind of access along the East River like that. It's extraordinary. So when we're thinking about new greenways, when we're working with EDC and with our partners, we're not just thinking about building the greenway, we're parks. We're thinking about trees and canopy and benches and places to recreate and relax with your family. We can't always get everything that we want, but we're pushing hard to make these so that, yes, it's transportation, but it's also green space. That's always going to be what's really important to us at the Parks Department.
So there are a lot of questions here about interagency kind of relations and efficiency, and I kind of want to cover as many of those as I can by asking one question. So for greenways, which cross several agency jurisdictions, how do we break down silos to optimize expertise? For example, making parks responsible for all vegetation maintenance and DOT responsible for all plowing.
Interesting. Maybe we need to have someone talk to the budget director. And I would love any volunteers, please. We think a lot about maintenance. I know it's a huge issue. It's one we're really focused on. It's one we talk a lot about with our agency partners. The way that it works today, in theory, if it's a greenway in a park, we maintain it. If it's a street, DOT maintains it. We know for sure it's not always easy and not always cut and dry. And frankly, that maintenance is a huge challenge across the city. I will admit it, DOT will admit it, New Yorkers for Parks has helped us to point to that. Huge, huge responsibility. One of the things that I will point to is with the latest federal RAISE grant, part of what we're doing with that planning is actually looking at jurisdictions and really mapping out whose responsibility is what, so that it can be very clear and so that it's not like it's not us and we're not going like this and pointing fingers. Along with understanding jurisdiction, it's also understanding resource needs. And there is no doubt that maintenance is a huge, huge issue for us, and having enough resources to maintain our parks and our green spaces and our greenways is an enormous challenge, and that's part of why, you know, Vital Parks for All, putting information out there, is both to elevate the importance of our parks and green spaces, but also give tools to New Yorkers to help us advocate for what the needs are. That's why the work that you are all doing here, that's why the Brooklyn Greenway Initiative is so important, to keep the focus on the administration and what the needs are. When we're creating these incredible spaces, it comes with the cost of maintaining. We know that we want to do the best job we can always with that, but we need the help and advocacy of New Yorkers, and we also need great partnerships, which we have, luckily, and continue to work on with DOT and our sister agencies.
Can you give us an update on the Destination Greenways funding?
The Destination Greenways funding, Mitchell, who's best to do that? Come on up.
So yeah, I
Got
mentioned a little bit about that in the presentation earlier, so I'm sure some folks heard about that. So far, this administration, City Council, has allocated over $70 million for the Destination Greenways projects across Brooklyn and Queens. So we're really excited about that. There's 3 projects in design right now along the Brooklyn route. Those are in Leif Erikson Park along the Shore Parkway Promenade and creating a connection from 4th Avenue and Bay Ridge down to that promenade, an accessible connection that's gonna have a beautiful way to like sit up on this hillside and look out at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge and see the sunset. It's gonna be very nice. On the Queens route, there is 4 or 5 projects now in design that are in Casina Corridor Park, in Casina Park, in Flushing Meadows Corona Park, and we just got funding in the fiscal year 25 budget for another project that hasn't quite started design yet, but hopefully will soon, in another section of Casina Park. So really the progress on the Queens route has been tremendous, and once these projects are finished with their design and go into construction, we're pretty close to having a fully accessible, connected route going all the way from Flushing Meadows Corona Park to the Vanderbilt Motor Parkway, which was the vision that we released only 2 years ago. So great progress being made in Destination Greenways.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you
Brought
so
the
much.
right person here. Question, thank you.
What is the ideal budget per square foot? This is a really specific question. The ideal budget per square foot to make every park as nice as Randall's or Central Park? I know the answer is more, but but if you had to put a number on it.
That might be one I have to get back to you on,
Sure.
Exactly a number. It is more
Yeah.
than what we have today, there's no doubt. But it is very much something that we, as I said, we take maintenance of our parks very seriously. We have an extensive parks inspection program where we rate every single park that is part of our park network. We evaluate those ratings on a bi-weekly basis. We bring together the chiefs of operations who are in charge of that maintenance to review those ratings. And we put the resources where they're needed most. But it's 30,000 acres. It's a huge network, and we're continuing to find ways that we can expand that maintenance. And honestly, so much of the great work we get done is through partners, volunteers, incredible organizations around different parks that help us to expand our reach and expand our tentacles.
How does the Parks Department balance adding more greenways with also including increases in public transportation, which is kind of a reference to the Queensway? So I guess the question here is balancing the increase in greenways that the Parks Department is inevitably going to be responsible for in some capacity with increases in public transportation. It's kind of an interesting connection.
It is an interesting connection, and I would point to the important work that we do with DOT, because we're always looking to balance that. As I said, at parks, we care about the transportation network, but we also care about making it green and accessible and welcoming to people. And so we're always going to be thinking about what is the best routes between our parks? How do we make sure we're bringing people to our parks in the safest, most accessible way? How are we making investments that are going to further access for the communities that need them most? So we're balancing access and investment and greening, and we're looking to do that in the most equitable way possible. And so when we're thinking about it, we're using that map, we're using the Vital Explorer tool that we developed to target where the investments are needed most. And is probably often going to be a conflict between, public transportation and green spaces. But I think that because we have a strong partnership with DOT, because, we're working closely on the ground on so many projects with EDC, with DOT, with DDC, we're navigating those challenges well. And we're always, at the Parks Department, going to be looking to prioritize greening and enhancing that access to parks.
Just one last question here. How can we improve the coordination between the advocacy groups that are here, the Greenways Coalition, obviously the Playfair Coalition, and New Yorkers for Parks, Brooklyn Greenways, everyone, improve the coordination between all those groups with the Parks Department and DOT? Do you have any recommendations for that?
Improve in the sense of closer collaboration or more input? What do you think?
I would say, closer collaboration, input, making sure that the advocacy groups are pushing in the areas that Parks needs, as well as DOT needs.
Well, thank you for that question, and I so appreciate it. And that's where forums like this are so important. And, at the Parks Department, we are, deep believers in the importance of that collaboration. And some of what I talked about earlier, you see it with the Queensway. You see when good community advocacy meets funding, what can happen, and it leads to more funding. I feel like at Parks, as opposed to any other agency, we are so fortunate to have incredible volunteer groups, community groups, that help support the work that we do, and we prioritize that. Every single capital project we do starts with a community input meeting. We don't start a project until we've heard that input from the community. We want to know what the community needs, wants, how are we designing something that's going to work with the local community. We're not perfect. I know we don't always get it right, but our thinking is always going to be geared towards the people who use this. What do they most need? As I said, I feel so fortunate as an agency that we have hundreds of thousands of volunteers who come out and help support our work every single year. Last year we launched something called Let's Green NYC, and it was really geared towards counting. Actually, how do we throw the light on the incredible work, and how do we celebrate those volunteers? And part of that was just making sure that we knew who was volunteering in our parks, knew the scope of that volunteerism, and putting it on a map, highlighting the good work that's being done, putting it on our website, helping to some of these smaller groups to thrive. And if you have a volunteer event, we want to help support that. We want to put it on our website. We want to give those volunteer groups a way to build support around their local park. The other really important arm of the Parks Department is our Partnerships for Parks division that is out there in the community, doing supporting grassroots organization, everything from providing tools for volunteer events to convening meetings, bringing people together around their parks. So I would say forums like this, speaking in a common voice, the Playfair Coalition, bringing people together and raising awareness of the fact that our parks are not luxuries. They are critical living infrastructure that needs to be supported. That's why our Vital Parks for All, it's about investments in living infrastructure. Because it's living infrastructure, we know that means it needs constant support. So the more that we can have people echoing and understanding the importance of our parks and green spaces, speaking with a common voice, the better off we're going to be. And you see that happening at forums like this. You see that happening through Playfair. You see people on the steps of City Hall. We didn't always have that, and I feel like it's a much stronger group of advocates than it's ever been. We are so appreciative and grateful for that, and we want to amplify that messaging.
Thank you so much. I think that's all the time we have for questions. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you
You're welcome.
all.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel.